Question 18 is a pretty tough question, so don't feel bad if you didn't get it. It's not meant for most students to get, for most test taker to get. Let's read the question stem here. The reasoning in the editorialist argument, so the reasoning in this argument, is most vulnerable to criticism on the grounds that the argument has done something bad. You see all these answer choices here start with verbs, right? They're accusing the argument of having done something bad, right? Acted wrongly in some way. So we call this a flawed method of reasoning question, and that's just sort of how we just categorize this question. Not that it's all that important, because I mean, if you don't know categories, you still can get this question right. And in fact, at the end of the curriculum, we encourage you to not pay attention very much to categories of question stems, because it's all about logic. It's all about whether the premises support the conclusion and what kind of mistakes are being made. That's what gets the question right or wrong, not the categorization. But anyway, so the editorialist says, in all cultures, it is almost universally accepted that one has a moral duty to prevent members of one's family from being harmed. So this moral duty, just to prevent your cousins, brothers, sisters, family, mom, dad, whatever, from being harmed, that's something that is prevalent in all cultures. Okay, fine. So thus, they conclude from this, premise leads to conclusion. And of course, we know that there's going to be something wrong with between this premise somehow is not going to support this conclusion because, well, they told us it's vulnerable to criticism. So so we accept this. It is in all cultures, it's universally accepted that I have a moral duty to prevent my cousin from being harmed. So thus, they say, few would deny that if a person is known by the person's parents. So okay, I guess that example didn't work. Let's just say, my parents want to prevent harm from coming to me. So if I'm known by my parents to be falsely accused of a crime, so I'm being falsely accused of, say, murder, then it would be morally right for the parents to hide the accused from police. That would be morally okay for my parents to hide me from the police. Now, does that really follow? Do you see, like, you can't just, I mean, I don't know, you have to be very skeptical when you're reading this stuff. Accept your premises. Yeah, okay, fine, accept your premises. And this is, the reason, this is a very hard question. We have to call upon, we have to invoke a ton of lessons on theory, on, like, what an argument is or premise is for you to properly explain this. I can't do that without explaining all of the teaching, all that background. But what we have to do is we have to accept the premise. But accepting a premise doesn't mean that you accept the conclusion. In fact, that's what you're questioning. You're questioning the support structure. Does this premise support its conclusion? Well, ask yourself. Let's say this is true. Yeah, in all cultures, it's universally accepted. You have a moral duty to prevent your members from being harmed. Does that mean that no one would deny, very few people would deny, that it's okay for your parents to hide you from the police? I don't think so. I think it would not be okay for your parents. I mean, if you're falsely accused, that doesn't mean your parents get the right to hide you from the police, right? So I think this doesn't follow. But anyway, you still have to articulate. Even if you think this doesn't follow, you have to articulate why. You can't just be like, it doesn't follow. Right? See, the answer choice will articulate why. And then hence, so there's a major conclusion here. So which renders this a sub-conclusion / major premise to support this. So from this, we say, hence it's sometimes okay to, morally right to obstruct police in the work. Well, there's nothing wrong with this support structure. If I accept this statement that it's morally right sometimes for parents to hide you from the police, then that is an instance of obstructing police work. So therefore, it's sometimes okay to obstruct police work. If I accept this premise, then I do have to accept this conclusion. So there's nothing wrong with the argument structure here, but there is something wrong with the argument structure here, right? Just because you have a duty to prevent your family members being harmed doesn't mean that it's okay for you to hide them from the police. Why not? Let's see which answer choice says that. It utilizes a single type of example of a purpose justifying broad generalization, but it's not. I mean, the generalization here is, what could the generalization be? It's okay to obstruct police work, right? Okay, let's say that's a generalization. But then the example is right on. I mean, the example is an example of obstructing police work. So that's not, it's not an error, right? If the idea is that this example is too narrow, then it's not. It's not too narrow because the example is obstructing police work. The conclusion, the quote unquote broad conclusion, is obstructing police work. So this is fine. This is not even if the argument is guilty of what A accuses the argument of doing, then that's, so what? It's not a wrong thing to do. B says, fails to consider the possibility that other moral principles will be widely recognized as overriding any obligation to protect a family member from harm. Yeah, there you go. Right? There are other, it's not like there's only ever one moral principle that applies to you. Sure, you have a moral duty to prevent your family from being harmed. You also have a moral duty to obey the laws in the society in which you live. right? Perhaps sometimes that second duty to obey the law of society in which you live overrides your first duty of preventing harm to your family members. And that's exactly what it is. The argument has failed to consider that that's a possibility. That other moral principles, for example, not obstructing police work, would widely be recognized as overriding your obligation to protect your family members from harm. And that's why this is a correct answer choice. C says the argument presumes that allowing police to arrest an innocent person is assisting justice and not obstructing justice. But does it do that? I mean, what is it doing here? It's presuming that preventing police from arresting an innocent person is obstructing justice. Does that mean that it's presuming allowing police arrest is assisting justice? I mean, I'm not really sure, but it doesn't even matter. Like whether you answer yes or no to that question, it doesn't matter because that's just not where the flaw is. That's not where the argument has made its mistake. It's talking about something else, right? B is pinpointing where the mistake is, right over here. D says takes for granted that there is no moral obligation to obey law. It does not take that for granted. See, what it does is it takes for granted that this moral obligation, moral duty to your family, very often overrides this moral obligation to obey the law, which is why B is correct in its description. It fails to consider that the opposite of that could be true. E says takes for granted that the parents mentioned in the example are not mistaken about their child's innocence. That doesn't matter. I suppose the argument takes for granted that the parent isn't mistaken about their child's innocence, but that's not where the argument is going wrong, right? That's not where the lack of support is. That's not where the argument is vulnerable to criticism. I mean, E is a tempting answer choice. It's saying like, oh, what if the parents are just wrong? What if the child is innocent? But it doesn't matter. Like the child could be innocent or not innocent. This moral duty does not override this other moral duty to obey, the laws in the society that you live in, right? That's the key there. It just doesn't matter whether the person is actually falsely accused or not falsely accused.